Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Men in Grey Sweats titled Farewell. And if we switch over to here, we have this track off of the album titled The Bulge, which was released as of June the 25th, 2024. So it's come out very, very recently. So we're going to listen through this track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. Alright, double tracking to those acoustics. Brushes with the kit.
If I knew I'd lose you, my darling, there's nothing I can say. There's nowhere to lose my heart when you took it away.
I mean, it's beautiful. The singer has such a great voice, and it sort of niches so nicely with the rest of the elements within the arrangement.
If I knew I'd choose you, my darling,
The bass line syncing with that is dope.
so much I'd change about myself. No matter the call, you know I'll be there for you as well. So long. Farewell to my demons.
Oh, tempo split.
Shadows. Farewell to my burdens and their damage. Farewell, I don't need this, I can manage. So long, farewell. Farewell to my demons in the shadows. Farewell to my burdens and their damage. Farewell, I don't need this, I can manage. So long, farewell.
So much really cool stuff is also happening here with the introduction of these distorted guitars there occasionally, not all the time, just lingering with those chords, with the vocals and the center harmonizing really nicely between the mid and upper range of parts with such great presence within the mix. It's also slower, as you can hear, and I think that allows the weight of that message to sort of sink in a bit more effectively there. It's very noticeable. It's quite effective. And then switching back to the initial.
I'd mend all the wounds of a goodbye with peace into my heart that you once knew. If you wanted the truth, if you gave me what I gave you, we could have made it through. So long. Farewell to my demons in the shadows. Farewell to my burdens and their damage. Farewell, I don't need this, I can manage. So long, farewell. Farewell to my demons in the shadows. Farewell to my burdens and their damage. Farewell, I don't need this, I can manage. So long, farewell. Farewell to
What a double chorus at the end, cool.
the shadows. Farewell to my burdens and their damage. Farewell, I don't need this, I can manage. So long, farewell. Farewell to my...
It's cool. I like this. What I was thinking or was initially going to say, right, and this is also part of why I waited, is that if you repeat a chorus verbatim an entire second time, it can be a little bit too much of it, especially if you've already had it before. Whilst it sounds great, it's good to have a bit of adjustment to it to keep it refreshing for the listener and to continue to keep that message interesting. So the fact that we made things kind of go down a little bit at this point to outro the track there was very clever in that last quadrant. It kind of fakes you out a bit.
Demons in the shadows. Farewell to my burdens and their
Fantastic shimmers there, man. It's fantastic. Great stuff. Farewell, track number 3, Off of the Bulge. Before I go into the collusion, I just want to say that I think this is a really well-written track. I kind of understand what it's about. I feel like I'm taking it a little bit too literally, but we're going to talk about that, in a moment, in the analysis section. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Men in Grace, where it's titled Farewell Off of the Bulge album. This part of the review is simply me talking about the track and going into different areas and giving feedback and all that kind of stuff. I think to start off with, I think this track was incredibly well done. I appreciate the story that's going on there. I feel like the chorus especially, I know there was more context provided in the verse, but the chorus, just allowing yourself to say goodbye to those things that were weighing you down and sort of destroying you, I think that's a very powerful message there. I adore that a bit. I think it's a really healthy thing within reason to be able to let go of that pain and suffering and stuff like that, and to try and sort of like walk away from that, if and when possible. And I think a lot of people who have had to go through similar experiences, have had to let go of stuff, might also be able to sort of relate to that. So I think there'll definitely be an audience for a story like this. I also want to know that just in the editing stage of this video, I had to listen through the first verse. He literally says "my darling" and his heart being taken away and everything like that, so I'm assuming that this is probably also a love song, saying goodbye to a loved one or something along those lines. It's my best guess. I mean, the stuff I said in the review I still stick by, of course, but that's just, again, I would be remiss to go and not mention what I've just heard as well. So it's like a love song combined with what I've said previously. Or like at least a song of love lost, if that makes sense. It's also the fact that it seems like it was very, very so close to the singer themselves, the vocalist. They sang well in the choruses and in the verse parts. There were easily identifiable melodies that were provided there that suited the tone of the lyrics quite well. They weren't super happy and positive or cheery. Even in the chorus section where we had some major chords occurring in the backing, I mean, we had major chords throughout, don't get me wrong. It's just that at the start with the picked guitars, the arpeggiated guitars and everything like that, you didn't think you were going to go into like a happy joy kind of track there. The way we communicated with the audience, it had the right kind of energy there. I think that the note choices in this chorus, especially working with it's quite a common chord progression, but I think the harmonies in the mid to high arrangement are really special. We showed solid vocal technique there, and I don't think there was a note out of place. We handled it really well. And we sounded like we were going through that experience we were talking about. There's a bit of exasperation in our voice there, a bit of sadness there. You could hear it in the way that it was sung there. It was believable. So I think in that regard, the lyrics and the singing makes sense. The track itself at 3 minutes 52 is well fleshed out. It actually goes really quickly. We had the slower sort of instrumental acoustic intro at the start there with the verse kind of bringing things in again. It's a bit quicker, but it still feels like it's very quickly. And then you get to that first chorus, things slow down with that kind of almost sort of like, how do I describe it? It's like every hit of the tom seems like a pregnant pause before you go into that slower chorus section there. That tempo shift is it's not blunt, but it's kind of staggered in a way that was very kind of intriguing, almost like you're going back into the throes of this conflict you're having to deal with again and again to try and say farewell and say goodbye to it and try to sort of like move on from it. I think that cycle is within itself something that might be trying to be sort of communicated here, and I think that's very clever if that is the case. Additionally, I think just in general, the structure of the track there, it was very simple and easy to follow. There were a few verses, there were a few choruses, there was a few solo instrumental elements, and that's it. There weren't any other sort of like solo sections or anything like that there. We didn't try to flesh out the story more than we necessarily needed to, but I think we got what we needed to from it anyway, so I think that was handled well. I believe that if I look at a few of the instruments that were included there that I quite appreciated, I think the guitarists were great. I liked the fact that they were double tracked and there were slightly different takes on each side there. It made it seem a bit more luxurious, I suppose, in a weird sense. It seemed like a little bit more sort of sophisticated. It's great to double track the same take on both sides, but you just kind of go, oh, that thing there is happening there, and like the kind of notes sort of like wash over each other, and it creates this interesting atmosphere that communicates a mood whilst keeping, again, intrigue and I think that the bass guitar as well, when we weren't sort of like, I should stick on the guitars. The distorted guitars we had, aside from those strummed or fingerpick parts on the acoustic, were a great forward to it. They weren't as dun 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 dun. They were just strummed kind of stagnant chords there with distortion there that hung over the mix like a mist. So I think the contrast between the distorted parts and the acoustic both and how they were played and how they sounded makes a lot of sense there. I think that rhythmically they were tight as well. The bass guitar, I think it soared up with the vocal melodies at some points, create a sense of unison with that tonally, and I think that was fantastic. There was nicely stacked in the lower end. Very satisfying, nice round tone to it, didn't peak out too much. It sat nearly with the chord progressions and the root notes of those of the guitar parts, was not overstepping the mark, but being additive as well. When the drums came in, like they were there, and it was a very organic performance there. It was very interesting with some of the fill transitions and stuff like that. There was some notes there which kind of sounded like they were playing together in the same room. There's a quite it seemed like they were kind of feeding off of each other and like watching each other as they played there. It almost sounded like a live take. I enjoyed that a lot. I think that we had a nice sort of sense of finesse with the cymbal beats, some of the tom fill stuff, especially going into that slower tempo. That would not have been an easy thing to do, but it kind of makes you wonder whether they didn't do this with a click track, in which case I think that's exactly how you needed to do it. It just makes it a bit more sort of like it doesn't sound overproduced or anything like that. It legitimately sounds like they're just great musicians who know how to sort of perform together, and they're releasing this album and that they've got that kind of awareness of each other to be able to play together without needing to sort of overcompensate. I think the tempo shifts between the chorus and verse sections as well were telling. I think it was more, we're taking the chorus slower to really cement those messages in. Maybe we were rushing through our thoughts outside of it in the verse there, but either way, it was compelling. And ultimately, when you combine these different ingredients together, you have a track where it simply does sound like it's more than enough with less, in the sense that we didn't overly saturate it with additional lead layers or anything like that, or solo sections or whatever. We could have done a lot of sort of like fancy stuff with this song, but I don't know if it would have necessarily benefited it. I think what we had are the core fundamentals. Again, the story being told well by a really like solid vocalist, with the harmonies there, and combining with the double track guitars and the different guitar tones, the bass and the drums. It's all you really need here to be able to make a compelling song. And if the story is solid and if the music is tight, and again, that is a common chord progression, but that's a reason for that. It's effective. It loops really nicely into itself there without any sort of like weird sort of irksome kind of things. It's just the overall theme of the track there sounded like a piece where we really wanted to allow the listener to sort of sit with us and hear us out. And I think, again, that's part of why the chorus was slowed there, to really sort of let those words sink in there. We were saying farewell. It was almost like the singer was saying farewell to us. The sadness with the minor chord at the start of each progression is leveled by the way that things are meted with the major triads underneath it. It doesn't ever get too dark or brooding. It's almost like a bittersweet experience there. You're supposed to move on, but you're sad that it had to occur in the first place. I think the differences in intricacy between various performances within the piece there allow for different levels of layering there, which make it intriguing. And yeah, again, there's a great sense of chemistry with the band without a note out of place. Finally, the studio recording, mixing, and mastering was tight. It was tight? Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was solid. I think that there was nothing there that sort of like stuck out to me as being a little bit off or kind of uncomfortable. I think that in general things were leveled really well. The vocals sounded, I think it was because up until the vocals came in, they were that added bit of clarity in the high end that I was really needing from this mix there. I was kind of wondering, okay, are we going to fill that part of the frequency spectrum up? And then we did, in a way that wasn't overbearing to it. There was a nice sheen to the way it was sung and the way it sounded there. So I think once everything came together, the vocals, the guitar, bass, and drums all niched together nicely in the frequency spectrum and the stereo field there. The music surrounded you in the headphones. The vocal performance was not overproduced. That guy could just sing, whether it was their melodies or harmonies there. It sounded nice and full. It was still nice and loud without pumping, so, limiting and bus compression was handled. And effectively, this is my review of this track from an act named Men in Grey Sweats, titled Farewell, off of the Bulge album, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and a Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time. It's either hell more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.